I now have host privileges, so we've got that worked out, and I've started the recording. Okay, so while you are signing up for GitHub, I'll kind of show you how GitHub works. So this is what kind of the base repository, or repo for short, looks like. So you can see here, this icon up in the upper left is a cat. And maybe I'll make this bigger. Can I make this bigger? There we go. I just made it a little bigger in case you couldn't see. So this is the GitHub logo. So it's a little cat. This is Project Pythia, because we're in a Project Pythia folder right now. And this is kind of their, we call it organization on GitHub. And then they have this repository that's called Pythia Foundations. You can see here that it has a little bubble that says public. They're not all public. Some of them are private. But this one's public, which means we can all see this. If you scroll down, you'll see these folders here and some files. And there are a lot here. And we don't need to know what they all mean. But this is essentially what it looks like when you're storing your files in GitHub. And if you scroll down, it has what's called a README. And this has some text for us that's kind of useful for us visiting the site to know what we're looking at. So this will say, this says Pythia Foundations. This is the source repository for the Pythia Foundations content collection. The rendered site can be found here. So if we click here, it'll take me back to this, this kind of online book format. And then it says that it is powered by Jupyter Book. So things that will be very useful to you, especially if you're less interested in writing code, but still interested in being involved, is if you go up to the top, there's this menu here. So it says code on the very left. Now it says issues. So if I click on issues, then I pull up here this list of what we call issues. So I'm just going to click on an issue that says problems running content on Binder. So this person made an issue and said, I'm having trouble running this on Binder, which we discussed yesterday if you were here. Not a big deal if not. And basically they explain what their issue is.
No,
getting some noise coming through. So they explain what happened and what they expected to have happen. Someone from the Project Pythia team responds and says, thanks for reporting this. Here's how we're working on it. Anyway, there's this whole conversation about how to fix this issue. So this is nice. This is something where you as a user, if you find something isn't working or has a bug, then you can come here, you can start an issue and explain, say, this is what I thought would happen, and this is what really happened. And often one of the maintainers of the software will respond. There's also this discussions. So I clicked on the discussions up here. This is it's similar to issues, but it's more for just any kind of discussion that you're interested in having. So it looks like they're not really using this discussions at the moment. They're using something else. And so you don't always have to use discussions, but anyway, you might say organizing content. So this is less a specific bug or issue with the content, but something where you say, you know what, I'd like to suggest a new way of organizing this. And then you can start this. And then it's the same kind of thing. There'll be a discussion. I guess no one responded to this. So that's GitHub discussions. So hopefully many of you have now got a GitHub login and also is there a question? Daniel, I just made you co-host. Thank you.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a GitHub account before. Is there any need for me to open another one? Or
No.
can the old one and use it?
No, you should only need one GitHub account. I only have one GitHub account, and I've had that account for like, I don't know, 8 years. So no, if you have an account, you're good to go.
All right, thank you.
So, okay. So I'm going to show you, zoom in again, another repository or repo that's on GitHub. And this one is, if you look in this upper left, you'll see that it says COESSING. So COESSING, we have our own organization on GitHub. And actually, if we click that here, this is all of the repositories we have. Some of them are private, some are public. So this is our public one. It's called COESSING Python 2023. And this is what we have in it. We have a README. We have this file, which we are going to ignore as it tells us to right now. And we have Pythia Foundations COESSING. Now, if you have been able to log into your hub, you'll see, other than the git ignore, you'll see these same two files. We have a README and we have this Pythia Foundations COESSING. So how this is actually working, and again, you don't need to know this, but I think it's interesting to know. We are essentially syncing this repository to our hub. So as you continue to log into the hub over the next week, as we get ready for the virtual school next week, we will probably be adding more folders and more files. And we'll be doing that by adding them to this repository. And then we have a way of syncing it directly to our Jupyter Hub so that you can all see that directly. So here is the link to this site if you're interested. And yeah, so you're free to kind of look around here. Let me go back through what we're doing. GitHub repositories, we just did that. Issues and discussions, we did that. Okay, we're going to do cloning and forking a repository. So I'm going to pull up this lovely diagram here that Pythia did for us. So this here is the cloud. So when we say like cloud computing, basically cloud computing just means that you're using someone else's server. You're not running something on your local computer. You're running something that kind of has a server somewhere else in the world. And it could be anywhere in the world, actually. There are a lot of different places for these. GitHub stores your files on the cloud. So we are kind of, in this case, this cloud represents github.com, which is this website. And this here, let's see if I can make this bigger. Oops. Oh, it doesn't make this any bigger. Okay. This here where it says official repo upstream. So official repo is essentially like what I was showing here. We have our COESSING repository. This is the official one. So this is where we are putting files. It's getting synced to our Jupyter Hub in our case. This is our kind of official repository for us.
No.
And we will often call that upstream. And I'll get to that in a little bit. So we can create essentially a copy of this repository, which is called forking. And so then you have something called my fork. So if you are following along in GitHub right now, so I believe you have to have an account to do this, you can click here and fork your own copy of Coessing Python 2023. So if I do that, it says that it'll say that I've already done this because I have already forked it. But you should get something that looks like this. Normally it will have your name. I'm actually part of a lot of GitHub organizations, so I could fork this as a lot of different organizations, which I'm not going to do. But you would choose your GitHub username. Typically, you want to keep the same repository name. You can keep everything here the same, and you will click Create Fork. And let's see, I will open up my fork. And what a fork looks like is what you're seeing on the screen now, which is very similar to what it looked like before, but with a very important difference. If you look in this upper left-hand corner, before it said Coessing as a Coessing organization. Now it says my own GitHub account, which my GitHub username is Paige M. So mine now says Paige M/Coessing Python 2023. So essentially all that I've done is made a copy of this repository where the upstream is part of Coessing, and I've copied exactly everything, and now I have one in my own name. Let's see, I'm going to go down to where it says forking. So forking a repository, as it says here, you create a copy of an existing repository, but you store it in your own personal GitHub organization. So the reason why you might want to do this is you might want to collaborate on a project, but you aren't one of the maintainers. And by maintainer, we mean someone who has permission to kind of update. So in our current upstream repository, which is our Coessing/Coessing Python 2023, I actually am a maintainer of this. So I can actually add files or remove files or anything like that. Often you aren't the maintainer, and so you're not able to directly add files or anything or make any updates. And so you have to create a copy by creating a fork. And when everything that's under your own name, you are basically maintainer status. You're able to make updates. And so you can then add a file here, and then you can kind of send it back over. It'll come over here as a pull request, and the maintainers here can decide if they want to add it into their software or not. So that's, let's see, there's another, that's essentially why you would fork a repository. So again, this is mostly of interest if you're kind of interested in continuing with programming, and this is just a very basic high-level view of what some of the options are that you can do on GitHub. So now I will talk about cloning a repository. So cloning a repository is another way of copying a repository, but it's one where you will copy it into your local computer. So this is an important distinction. When I was forking, this is all done on the website. So my forked copy is on GitHub, so it's on this website. When I'm cloning a repository, what I'm doing is copying what's in a repository, but downloading it all to my local computer. Or you could also do the same thing in your Jupyter hub. So I will go ahead and try this. Hopefully this will work. So from the Jupyter hub, you can open up a terminal. And to do that, if it wasn't open already, you can click this upper left button here where it says plus, go down to other, and there's something here that's called terminal, and you can click on that. And then you should get something that looks like this. So this is, if you haven't used terminal before, it's a little bit cryptic, but this is how we can often interact with GitHub. And you can now from here, you can git clone a repository. I'm jumping around a little bit, but I am going to suggest that we git clone this Project Pythia sandbox, which I will put in the chat. So if you have your Jupyter Hub running and your GitHub account, you can follow along. We will, we have this recorded now, so we will be posting this so you can follow along later. But we are going to git clone this repository. So this is called GitHub Sandbox. This is, it's all written down in the Pythia content here. And we're using this sandbox is often used as something, if you're familiar with a sandbox, we have, kids that might like to sit in a sandbox and play with sand. This is the same idea here. We have a sandbox where we can just get something and kind of play around with it. So we will use this sandbox. And the way to git clone is you go to this green button here that says code. You click on that, and it should automatically say clone here, and then it should have HTTPS highlighted. And then you can see this URL, https://github.com, Project Pythia, and so on. I'm going to press this button off to the side, which will copy this link. So I click that. Now there's a little check mark that says copied. And now I'm going to go back to my Jupyter Hub. And in this terminal that I opened, I'm going to type git clone. So git, G-I-T space, clone space, and then I'm going to paste. And so it just pasted that same address, URL, website that I just copied. And then I will hit enter. And hopefully you will get something that looks like this. And you'll see some lines that printed out. It says cloning into GitHub Sandbox and blah, blah, blah. And basically, if it says done here, then it works successfully. And so what did we just do? If I go back to my file system, we can see now that I just typed git clone. I just started a GitHub Sandbox in my Jupyter Hub. So I just copied everything from here, from this GitHub Sandbox repository, and I now have it. If I double click on it, I can see everything here locally on my own Jupyter Hub. So you can do this exact same thing on your computer as well, but you need to have Git installed. So I'll send out more resources on that, but for now it's best to just use it through the Jupyter Hub. So that was cloning. And now we have all of these files here. You're welcome. You can open them up. You'll see this is just the README. This is all in Markdown. I don't think this works, but theoretically we should be able to preview this. No, it doesn't work. But anyway, you can see all the code that's over here. So that was cloning, and all of these, how to do this is all included in this project Pythia under cloning and forking. So it has these screenshots of how to do this. So you can go through all of that if you're interested. Okay. How are we doing? Is anyone able to follow along? I know I'm jumping around a lot. Oh, thanks, Daniel, for those links. Are there any questions of like what we're doing or why we're doing it, or having trouble accessing something? No questions at this point? Okay. So now we have a few kind of, okay, so we've started with GitHub, which, as I said, is a repository where we basically can store our software in a bunch of files. And I've shown you a few ways where we can kind of copy things over so that we can do work and make updates ourselves. We now are going to pivot toward using Git. So basic version control with Git. So Git is different from GitHub. Git is a version control, is basically used for version control, but it integrates very well with GitHub. So Git is, it's not really a language, but it's kind of its own language. It just has a few specific things that we can do with it. And you can run Git on your local computer. You can run it on Jupyter Hub. You can run it on any computer. GitHub integrates very well with Git. So basically, we can use Git to help. And when I said GitHub helps with version control, it does that through Git. So here's a little bit of what is version control. So I kind of mentioned this before. It lets us keep track of what changes were made to a file, when they were made, and who made them. So this is really, really helpful if you're collaborating together with other people. And it's also really important if you have a software package that a lot of people use. Then you want to make sure that your software is always runnable. And as I said before, maybe you make an update and it breaks something and the software doesn't work anymore. You want to make sure that you have that history so you can just revert back to a previous version as needed. So this is what I was saying before. Git is not GitHub. So GitHub is a web-based platform for hosting code and collaborating with other people. Git is a command line version control system. And command line is essentially what we were doing here with terminal. We wrote a command, we hit enter, and it did something. So this is Git is used at what we call the command line. You can read a bit more here. There's a little history of why it's called Git, which I won't go into now. Yeah. Let's continue here with a few Git commands. So we just typed git clone, and then we copy and pasted this link that we got from before for the Pythia sandbox. Now you can see this black blinking cursor. That's where I will be typing. There are many commands, and I'm not going to go over all of them today, but there are some commands that you can do, and they all start with git. So I can type git space status, and it will print out some information that is useful for me because I know I've used Git before, and it is helpful to know. So it says on branch main. So branching is a thing that we probably won't get to today, but it is part of Git. And again, it's all in Project Pythia. And then it kind of tells me there untracked files and a few other things. So this is this command line interface that we have. And this goes into a bit more detail here. So in order for you to interact with GitHub while you are using Git, you need to configure your GitHub account. So you can follow the instructions that are listed here. This goes through how to do a few things like generate personal access tokens, which you will need to do. I suggest doing the personal access token for now, as it's a bit more straightforward than this option. There are two options. And then it tells you how you can have different notifications on GitHub. Let's see, maybe I can show some of that. Okay, maybe we should go through this. So let's go through and actually have you generate personal access token on GitHub. So if this, you have to have a GitHub account. So if you have a GitHub account, it will look something like this. This is mine. It lists a bunch of my repositories over here. If I go up to my image, I have a photo. You might just have a little diagram there. I need to move Zoom out of my way. Zoom is entirely in my way. And if you go and click on that, you have a menu of options. And if you go down to settings, then it takes you to this page where you have these settings and you can choose all sorts of things. If you go down on the left-hand side to developer settings and click that, now you'll see it has on the left-hand side, it says something that's called personal access tokens. So I will click that, and then I will click Tokens Classic. And it will take me here. So you are looking at my tokens that I currently have set up. So if you are new to GitHub, you probably won't have anything listed here. So what you will do is generate new token. And you'll say generate new token classic for general use. You will click that. It may ask you to do an authentication, like it's asking me. I have a two-factor authentication going, so I will do that very quickly. Okay, so I just had to go through my authentication. Depending on how you set up your account, you might have to do that. And then you should get something that looks like this. And so you see all of this list of things here, and at the bottom, there's a generate token. So there you can generate tokens for all of these different options. For now, I suggest that you all just click all of them. So you'll check all of the boxes. This makes sure that your token will work for whatever you want to do. And you can click all of these. There should be a check all. Anyway, so you can click all of them. And then the expiration, the default is 30 days. You're welcome to use 30 days. You can make it as long as you want, or you can have no expiration. So you don't have to do this again. But this is a security feature. So if you're concerned about security, then you can have it expire in some number of days. Or if you just don't care too much and you just don't want it to expire, you can click no expiration. And then you can write a note. I just usually say general token. And then you will click generate token. I'm not going to because I already have one of these active. And it will then on your screen, it will display a long string of digits and numbers and letters. And you will want to copy that and store it somewhere on your local computer where you won't lose it, because you only get to see that once. So you won't get to see the token again. So they show it to you initially, you have to copy it so that you have access to it later. And then you won't be able to see it again. And the reason why you need to do this is if you want to have Git interact with your GitHub account. So hopefully some of you followed along, or you can, see some of this is written in more detail in the Project Pythia. And they have a link to GitHub's personal access token creation page, so you can follow along there. So let's go back to Git now. And let's follow along on these instructions here. I need to move my Zoom window again. So this is having us create a new feature branch. So a branch on GitHub, with Git, is basically I feel like I need a diagram here. It's a way to kind of make updates to your software that's not going to disrupt the main software that you have right now. So you kind of have your main branch, and then you can have a separate branch and you can make updates there. And only when you're sure that that's working, you can merge that branch back in. I'm going to find, there are some really good diagrams for this. Okay, well, let's see. No, I don't really like this. Okay, I should have pulled up a diagram before, but essentially, you have your main branch is usually something you don't want to touch, and then you start another branch, and it's like the branches of a tree. That's why it's called that. So you have like one main branch, and then you start a branch off to the side, and then at some point you might merge it back into the main branch. So if you are following along, we're going to do what is listed here. So we are going to type git checkout -b fix typo, or if you can follow along on the Foundations book, you can just copy it here. But I will go ahead and type it out, git checkout -b. So there are a lot of git commands. For now, I'm just going to throw a few out at you, but there are many resources of what these different commands are and what the options are. So actually, I'm going to first go into our GitHub sandbox. So I'm going to type cd GitHub-sandbox. CD means change directory. And now you can see it's listed, I'm in the GitHub sandbox. So now I'm going to type git checkout. So I have to move my Zoom window again. This is very much in the way. Checkout -b. And then I'm just going to follow exactly what they are doing here and say fix -typo. Fix -typo. And then I hit enter. And you'll see a line was printed out. Switched to a new branch. And that new branch is called fix -typo. So if I type git status now, it says I am on branch fix typo, and here are some untracked files. So here we go. We saw this. It said on branch fix typo, and then at the bottom it say nothing to commit, working tree clean. We go back here. Nothing added to commit, but I actually have some untracked files, which is fine. You will have that as well. So now we are going to make we are going to fix a typo. So this says using your favorite text editor. We'll just open it in Jupyter Lab. Open the file github-sandbox sample.txt. I'm going to go to my file system and I'm going to double click on sample.txt. And we can see that there's this is just a text file. You may be very familiar. And we notice here, it says fixing something as simple as a typo is great. But you'll notice that fixing is misspelled. So we are going to update the word fixing, and then we'll save those changes. So we will type we'll put an I between the F and the X. You can see this, this dark circle here. That means that it's been updated and hasn't been saved. So you can do save text. Now this goes back to an X instead of a circle. So now we've just saved this. So if I go back to my terminal tab, and down here at the cursor, I type git status, you see that something new appeared. So it still says on branch fix typo. Now it says changes not staged for commit. And it says modified sample.txt. So basically Git has seen that we made an update to this text file called sample.txt. And it says something was modified. And so what we would do in this case is we would say, let me go back to see here. If you're curious what the differences are, you can say git diff, and it will show us. So again, down at the cursor, git space diff, and it shows us here what was changed. So it says we changed sample.txt, and it actually, this is very nice. It has it all in red. It says you got rid of this line and you added this line. And we can see that actually the only difference is this I right here. So git diff showed us what changes we made in case we weren't clear on that. And so now we are going to do what's called staging and committing our changes. And for this, I will do git add. And then I'm going to type sample.txt. And if I do git status, we see that now this is, earlier it said modified, and it was in red, and it said changes not staged for commit. Now it says changes to be committed, and it's in green. So I've now kind of added this to the staging. Again, there's a lot of terminology here, so I'm just flying through it. And so that's where we added it to our kind of staging. The next thing that we do is we are going to commit it. So we will say git commit, and then we have to type -m, and we have to type a little message here. So I will say git commit -m, and then I will put in quotes, fix a typo. You can use single quotes or double quotes, but this message has to be in quotes. And then I hit enter. And this is where you will see if you've set up your Git account. So this is actually kind of why I wanted to get here. And I know we're kind of at the hour. I'm just going to go for a little longer. Feel free to leave if you need to. this says author identity unknown. Please tell me who you are. So this is helpful. Git is actually telling you what to do. It says, we don't know who you are. And that's because I've been using Git, but I haven't said what my Git username is. So it doesn't know what my GitHub account is. And so if I'm trying to sync between my own folder and GitHub, then I need to tell it who I am. But very helpfully, it tells you what to do. So you will want to run each of these lines. I'm not going to do this at the moment. You will just copy this. And where it says user email, you keep the user.email. Where in the quotes is what you will change. And you will put in the email that you used to log into GitHub. And then you will put your name. So I would put my GitHub email account, whichever email you used. Maybe that's your Google account or something else. And then I would put Paige Martin in quotes. So I would just copy all of this and replace your name with my name. And then I would run each of these lines. And then I could run the previous line again, and it would run through because it would know who I am on GitHub, and it would be able to be able to communicate with my GitHub account. Okay, this is quite a lot. It's been quite the crash course. As I said at the beginning, you will not need to know anything about Git to do almost all of our Python content. The one exception that I can think of right now is that I will be leading a session at the end of next week on how to use Git and GitHub to create a free personal website, which is really great. My current website uses it. It's free, so it's really nice, but you do kind of have to know a little bit about Git and GitHub. So the other thing I will say is that Git and GitHub are can be very complicated and take a while to learn. So don't get frustrated by any means. The joke among kind of my community is that no one really understands Git. We all learn a few lines of what to type, and then we always have to Google, oh, how do I do this again? And there are many resources which I'll put together and post on the website. But if you got anything out of today, which I hope you did, it's that if you see a page like this public repository, you know what a repository is, you know kind of what these a few of these things are, what an issue is, you know how to copy this repository either by doing git clone by typing code or by clicking here and doing a fork. The last things I'll leave you with is if you are interested in following along and seeing what updates happen to a repository, you can watch. So you have these notifications. By default, you will get an email notification if someone mentions your name. So if you do @ someone's username, you will get notified. You can also say all activity. So I might put all activity, and that means that when anyone adds anything to this repository, I will get notified. And I actually do want to do that because I'm one of the maintainers of this. So I do want to have that. You can also say ignore. I never want notifications from this repository, or you can select what you want. The other thing you can do is if you really like this repository, you can star it. That it kind of shows up kind of at the top of your list. You can say, yeah, this is a starred repository. So, okay, I think I will stop there for now and open it for questions. And I hope there are quite a few because I know this was a lot. I'm going to stop sharing just for a moment so I can see everyone. Okay, questions comments, concerns, confusions? Is there anything? Did I lose you all? It's too complicated, which is fine. It is. No questions? Daniel, did you have oh, is there a question? No. Daniel, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hello,
Can you hear me?
To say something. Maybe
Yes.
when Victor is done, then I'll come in.
All right, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Paige Martin, for your
Okay.
presentation.
I hope this was helpful.
But I do want to request, can you make it?
What's
Yeah,
that?
thank you so much. Can you make today's video? Can you make today's video available?
Yeah.
So we can look at the video and follow up the lectures.
Yes, definitely. So this video did start a bit late. So I apologize for that. I will share this video. I also have, I believe there's a previous video from a previous coessing where I went through some of this as well. Now some things do change. The GitHub website looks a little bit different than it did a couple years ago. And the Project Pythia online book will be very helpful as well, because as you saw, there's a lot going on and it's really confusing, or at least it was very confusing for me for many years. But that one has these screenshots and will walk you through how to do a lot of this. And again, if you're interested in really writing software, then this is really helpful. If you just wanted to learn some Python and run some code at the virtual school next week, you don't really need to know how to use Git and GitHub. I think it's nice to know that they exist, and it's like how pretty much all software developers work together. Everyone uses GitHub, and so it's a nice tool to know about, and it's something that you can get involved with as well. So yeah. Yeah, Daniel, do you want to tell everyone to start downloading for tomorrow, for later today?
Yeah. So once again, thank you guys for coming by. So in about 2 hours time, we're going to have another session where we are going to focus on how to manage and install Python. As Paige mentioned, everything we'll be doing during the summer school will be running all our codes on the cloud. But it's quite important that you're also able to code on your local system. So that's what our next session will be focusing on. And I'm going to share 2 links to download some software. And so for those of us who are able to download prior to joining later, please try and do that. Yeah, I'm sharing the link now. Yeah, that's just about it. Thank you, Paige.
I'm muted. Thanks, Daniel, for running the session later today. I will chime in at least right at the beginning. And that will be very useful. You don't need to have anything downloaded to your local computer to do any of the Python content that we are doing next week. So the session that Daniel is running is just so that you have it locally, because at the moment, we cannot keep this hub running longer than the school. So we are working on that, but it does cost money and we have to find the funds to do that. So but what you'll see on the hub, everything will look pretty much identical. If you you can run Jupyter Lab exactly as it looks on the hub on your local computer. So pretty much everything that we are teaching you can run locally as well. And so that's why we're having Daniel run that. So yeah, so thanks for doing that. That's great. Okay, I just sent a message in the chat about that, happy to answer questions about this. And Git and GitHub, as I said, are just really confusing. So hopefully, you can start to think about it. Maybe hearing a few of the terms, you can better understand it in the future. And if you want to join the session at the end of next week to create a website, then you will be using Git and GitHub. And I will send out some more details on that. And we're also planning to set up a Slack again. So if you're familiar with Slack, that's a nice place where you can ask questions and either instructors or other participants can help answer those. So, okay. I think that was everything that I had. So if there are any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope to see you in a couple hours. When is your session, Daniel?
In 2 hours time.
In
2.5
hours.
or 2 hours 15. Now it's from the current time, irrespective of your time zone, the session is in 2 hours 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, time zones. Yeah. And we'll be using the same link. So
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all and see you later.
So Paige, you can stop recording.